Welcome back to Don't Waste the Chaos. I'm your host, Kerri Roberts, and today we're diving into a topic that often flies under the radar in leadership circles, but has the potential to create serious chaos in the workplace if left unaddressed, and that is reverse bullying. This is one of those complex issues that, as leaders, we need to be equipped to handle with both discernment and humility because it challenges the traditional understanding of workplace dynamics. Today, I'm going to unpack what reverse bullying is, how it manifests, and what you can do about it in your organization. Now, let me tell you why I'm recording this today. I actually wrote a blog post on April 27th, 2024. And when I wrote that, it got a little airtime. I got shared a lot on LinkedIn. Like, people were really interested in it because I had not seen anything about reverse bullying out there. I wrote about it in a very benign way, but really the reason why it's so important to me is because I had this experience as an executive. I was bullied, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, boo-hoo, you get paid a ton of money. Like, usually it's employees getting bullied. Sure, that happens. I'm not saying it doesn't. Both things can exist. And what I'm saying is this is a personal story of mine. And so I wanted to shed some light on it because I know for a fact it's happening to other people. So that blog post got a decent amount of reach. And just the other day, somebody on LinkedIn re-commented and tagged me on it. And the person was talking about reverse bullying. And they were like, Kerri Roberts had something to say about this a while back. So I wrote this blog post. And while discrimination, harassment, and bullying are well-recognized issues in the workplace, this phenomenon, reverse bullying, is definitely not getting enough airtime. So in this scenario, subordinates intimidate their managers, making it challenging for leaders to hold them accountable for their actions. And as CEOs and as leaders, it's crucial to address this issue head on, ensuring a healthy and productive work environment for everyone involved. Now, here's the way I've seen it play out. I've seen individuals be afraid of addressing issues because that person may threaten to quit or withhold information, or might sabotage a client relationship. I've seen all kinds of things, but we have to take action as leaders. So as a leader, it's essential to take a stand against reverse bullying and create a culture of respect and accountability in your organization. By addressing these issues proactively and decisively, you can foster a positive work environment where everyone feels valued and empowered to contribute their best, even those on your management team. Reverse bullying is a significant concern for small to mid-sized business leaders, but it's not insurmountable. By recognizing the signs, promoting transparency, and providing support for managers, you can effectively address this issue and cultivate a healthy organizational workplace culture. As leaders, it's our responsibility to create workplaces where everyone can thrive and succeed. So, what is reverse bullying? We all know bullying in the workplace can be a problem, but when we think about bullying, we usually imagine a manager or leader mistreating an employee. However, today we're talking about the flip side that doesn't get talked about nearly enough: when employees mistreat or intimidate their managers. This is what I'm calling reverse bullying. Reverse bullying shows up when subordinates create a toxic dynamic by intimidating their leaders, often through either defiance, aggressive confrontation, or even threats of legal action. This dynamic can make leaders feel paralyzed or fearful to take action, hold people accountable, or even address behavioral issues. I was in an organization once where there was one particular individual that was like the gossip queen. And she was constantly spinning things around. And when I got there, I realized it was a known issue. Everybody talked about this individual was like that. And I was like, why don't we just stop that? And they were like, no, you'll make it worse. Well, as an executive at that organization, I was like, hard pass. I'm not going to just like ignore it. Like, this is a part of our culture. And so I'm going to do something about it. Long story short, I addressed it, stayed on it. And she ended up threatening a lawsuit against me for age discrimination. Now, it wasn't age discrimination in any way, shape, or form. It was the way she was showing up behaviorally in the workplace. And so I had to call her bluff. Have your attorney reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to that individual. It has nothing to do with your age and everything to do with this. And I just kept drawing it back, everything to do with this. And I had documentation and I wrote her up and I had other people involved and I got record from other people because I wasn't going to play games. And you know what ended up happening? That person quit. Over time, that person quit. And so it's not easy. We think it's easier just to ignore it. And it's not initially easy to address it, but it positively impacts our workplace culture when we do. So instead of just telling my stories, which I've got a couple, and one of them's real spicy because it's literally my personal account of how I was bullied in the workplace, but I did a little digging to see what court cases I could find. And let me tell you, not very many. And I was looking for court cases of when this happened and then when judgment was ruled in the favor of the manager. And again, slim pickings. Now, here's my take on this. I think many times as leaders, and this is the narrative I told myself, you're stronger than this. You get paid to deal with this. This is your fault that you're being treated this way. You're the leader. And so how would it look if you said someone else is bullying you? Where do you go with a report like that when you are the senior leader? There was just a lot of things I told myself, and I can see that it's likely happening with a lot of other people. So I'm going to continue to shine a light on this. So I want to go through a couple of real life impact stories though, to dive in. And the reason why I was tagged on LinkedIn recently was regarding the Laura Händel case. So to give you an idea of how real and damaging this issue can be, I'm sharing a recent and highly significant legal case involving a nurse manager named Laura Händel. Laura became the target of what can only be described as a campaign by 4 subordinate nurses who collectively filed grievances and reported her to the Nursing and Midwifery Council in the UK. What followed was a 6-year ordeal during which the tribunal brought 32 charges against Laura based on almost entirely these specific nurses' accounts. So I'm going to give you a structured outline summarizing the case, highlighting key details, findings, and takeaways, especially as they relate to reverse bullying, and offer some lessons for leaders and business owners based off what I've learned. So here's an overview of the case. Laura Händel was the nurse manager at Stonyhurst Health Center in the UK, and it also involved these 4 subordinate nurses. So the issue was this: 4 nurses filed a collective grievance against Händel and reported her to the Nursing and Midwifery Council, the NMC. The NMC then filed 32 charges against her, leading to a protracted and flawed tribunal process. So the legal focus of this, the High Court appeal reviewed how professional discipline tribunals assess witness credibility, especially when conflicting narratives are involved. So that's setting the stage. Let's go through the key findings by the High Court. First finding was witness credibility was not properly assessed. The tribunal failed to evaluate the general credibility and reliability of the witnesses, which was primarily these 4 nurses. The witnesses provided inconsistent, fabricated, and contradictory accounts, often supported by objective evidence. The second key finding was this: evidence of collusion among the nurses. So the nurses coordinated to submit a super complaint, if you will, to drive Händel out. The court found that this was a toxic campaign driven by grievances and motives, which, in short, one of the nurses had applied for Händel's job, hadn't got it, and they decided to go together and push this person out. Now we're getting to the details right here. Maybe before you were like, I don't even know why we're talking about this conversation, but now you see this happens all the time. When you hire externally or maybe promote a colleague into a role, there's a lot of times where a group of employees will say, we're not going to listen to this person, or I should have been hired, or whatever it is. So you can see already how this can become a problem. So let's talk about several procedural failures in this case. The tribunal considered charges in isolation. So each one of the reported bits, they considered it in isolation, ignoring the broader pattern of collusion across these 4 nurses. Cross-examination was inappropriately curtailed, and then Händel was suspended for 13 months, you all, while this was going on, even though no interim restriction had been placed during the initial years-long investigation. 13 months. She was suspended from her role because of this. There's a huge damaging delay. So proceedings dragged on for 6 years, from 2018 to 2024, which costed Händel her job, her well-being, and her ability to work. And then her new employer, who was satisfied with her performance, terminated her employment due to the ongoing proceedings. So the last key thing in this case is the tribunal imposed unwarranted sanctions and resisted reasonable cost claims from Händel's legal team, and the NMC was found to have acted with unrealistic and unsupported reasoning. So reverse bullying was then identified. The subordinate staff intimidated and undermined their manager through false allegations. This created an internal hostage situation where Händel could not perform her role without fear of reprisal. Händel was isolated, discredited, and ultimately forced out despite support from colleagues and management. So, what are the key takeaways that you as a leader or a business owner can learn from this case? First and foremost, I want you to learn that reverse bullying is real and it's destructive. Employees can weaponize grievances to undermine leadership. Leaders must recognize when they're being bullied or manipulated from below. Also, credibility assessments matter. Thorough, fair analysis of witnesses and their credibility is critical. Leaders and HR teams should not accept allegations at face value. You need to look for objective evidence and patterns of behavior, not a one-off. The next is collusion is a threat. Pure collusion among employees can escalate workplace toxicity, as we saw in this case specifically. We need to be alert to coordinated efforts to damage reputation or to gain power. Next, documentation is key. Leaders must document conflicts, performance issues, and decisions consistently. This is vital for protecting both the organization and the individuals involved. Also, timely resolution is crucial. Prolonged investigations harm everyone involved. Organizations should prioritize swift, fair conflict resolution to avoid long-term damage. Next, leadership needs protection too. We're seeing that, right? Just as employees have rights, leaders must be protected from false or malicious claims. Organizations must support leaders facing undue hostility or manipulation from their subordinates. And then my last key takeaway on this case is we need to rely on legal and HR expertise. Complex cases require professional support, so don't delay in bringing in legal or HR advisors to ensure fair outcomes and mitigate risk. The Laura Händel case underscores how reverse bullying left unchecked can destroy careers and cultures. Leaders must be equipped to handle these dynamics with discernment, courage, and clear procedures to safeguard organizational integrity and human dignity. Here's another case that started out against the manager, but then switched directions to the surprise of many. I'm giving you a detailed outline on the Ruffy versus the Board of Management of St. Anne's School case. I'm going to highlight the key details, the key findings, and takeaways for leaders and business owners like I just did. Particularly, I'm going to put this in the context of workforce bullying and leadership accountability. So here's the case overview. The title was Ruffy versus the Board of Management of St. Anne's School. This happened in Ireland. So these are both outside of the US because we don't see a lot of cases like this being documented in the US. So the key issue was, does a flawed disciplinary process equate to workplace bullying if it causes psychiatric injury? The outcome of the case was this. The Supreme Court reversed a prior high court ruling and clarified that imperfect processes do not automatically equal bullying. So let's get into the facts. The plaintiff was Mrs. Ruffy. She's a special needs assistant at St. Anne's School in Kildare. The claim was it alleged she suffered psychiatric injury due to bullying through a flawed disciplinary process. The High Court in 2016 ruled in favor of Ruffy, awarding her a bunch of damages. It expanded the definition of bullying to include flawed procedures. Now, with the Court of Appeal, they overturned the High Court, stating the process was flawed, but it did not constitute bullying. Then the Supreme Court, when we get into that, they upheld the Court of Appeal's decision, narrowing the definition of bullying and dismissing Ruffy's claim. So here are the key findings. The first is this: clarified definition of workforce bullying. So using precedent from the Quigley versus Complex Tooling and Molding Limited case, which is a previous one that's similar, the court reaffirmed that bullying must be repeated, inappropriate, undermining to human dignity at work, and resulting in a recognized psychiatric injury to warrant damages. So in this case, we see flawed procedures do not equal bullying. So the disciplinary process was defective in this case, but did not reach the threshold for bullying. So essentially, the leader administered disciplinary action. It was messy. And so then the employee said because of that, she had psychiatric damage. And while they recognize that the process was defective, it doesn't reach a threshold for bullying. So the key insight on this is this: not all procedural failures undermine dignity. A botched process is not inherently bullying. So there were key elements of bullying that were clarified. Repeated behavior requires a pattern, not just multiple incidents. Inappropriate conduct must be inappropriate on a human level, not just wrong or erroneous. And then when it comes to undermining dignity, conduct must be outrageous, unacceptable, and offensive to a degree beyond tolerance. So what does this court case mean for leaders and business owners? This sets a clear threshold for bullying claims. This ruling narrows the definition of bullying, preventing everyday management actions like feedback and discipline from being misconstrued as bullying. I'm telling you this because as a leader, this means if you're fearful of holding people accountable, giving them feedback, disciplining them, you don't have to be fearful. You're not bullying. And if they turn on you and can't receive it and start trying to push you out because of it, that's reverse bullying. The next is that leadership conduct must be severe and offensive to qualify as bullying. So you're day to day trying to be a good manager. You don't have to worry about this. The next thing that's a key learning for a leader or business owner is we want to maintain fair and transparent procedures. While imperfect processes may not constitute bullying, they still matter. We want to ensure fairness, transparency, and documentation in all disciplinary or performance management processes. This helps secure us in our decisions to lead, to actively lead, so that way we don't have to be worrying about being held hostage in this case. We need to have confidence in our leadership authority. The court acknowledged few people subjected to reprimand or discipline accept it stoically. So a lot of people don't like it, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't give the feedback or shouldn't issue the disciplinary action. Leaders should not fear legitimate performance management, provided they act within reasonable and fair boundaries. Also, we need to think about balancing leadership duties and employee rights. This encourages a balanced approach. Uphold management accountability while respecting employee dignity. Both can and should exist. Leaders must manage conduct confidently without excessive fear of litigation, as long as procedures are fair. And then lastly, human level standards apply. Conduct should be judged by human standards, not idealized perfection. We are not perfect as leaders. We need to be doing our best. Mistakes that we make as leaders do not equal misconduct. This encourages compassionate, realistic leadership, acknowledging human imperfection. So key takeaways in this case: bullying claims require a high threshold. They have to be repeated, inappropriate, dignity undermining behavior causing psychiatric injury. A flawed disciplinary process, while serious, doesn't automatically amount to bullying. Leadership actions must be judged by human standards. Errors in judgment or process aren't necessarily bullying. And this ruling protects fair management practices, which allows leaders to act without undue fear. Clarity encourages confident leadership. So follow your processes, document your actions, and treat people fairly. This landmark case empowers leadership to lead boldly but fairly, emphasizing humane leadership over legal perfectionism. It draws a line between management missteps and true bullying, creating clarity and confidence in how leaders manage their team. So, let's talk about the organizational impact of reverse bullying. I wanted to go into those two court cases. I know there is a lot of details there, but I want to show you that these are like not just my opinions. These are things going on out there in legislation, and they've got hard truths to them for both sides of the aisle, if you will. So whether you're an employer or an employee, to learn from. So what does this overall mean for you as a business leader or as an owner? First, tolerating reverse bullying undermines your leadership and erodes trust across your organization. So if someone is being insubordinate, we have to address it. It sends a message that bad behavior is tolerated if it's directed up the chain instead of down. So if you treat your leader disrespectfully, okay. If you treat your colleagues or your subordinates disrespectfully, not okay. And that doesn't make any sense. Left unchecked, reverse bullying can drive good leaders out of your organization. It can lead to excessive turnover. It can create a culture of fear and resentment, and it can undermine your ability to hold anyone accountable. So how do you recognize it and address it? Let's talk about key strategies for attacking and tackling reverse bullying. Here are some insights and strategies for navigating the complexities of reverse bullying in your organization. And I'm hoping that you can soak this in and apply this today. First, we need to recognize the signs of reverse bullying. Reverse bullying occurs when employees intimidate their managers, creating a dynamic where leaders feel afraid to address inappropriate behavior. This can manifest in various forms, including defiance, confrontation, and threats of legal action. Let's talk about the impact on organizational culture. Tolerating reverse bullying sends a damaging message to the rest of your organization. It undermines trust, creates resentment, and erodes team morale. Left unchecked, it can lead to excessive turnover, increased stress levels, and a toxic work environment. So there are strategies for addressing reverse bullying. The first is this: we need to promote transparency and accountability. Foster a culture of open communication where employees feel comfortable addressing issues directly, even managers. We need to encourage feedback and empower our managers to hold individuals accountable for their behavior. We need to establish clear expectations. Set clear expectations for behavior and performance and communicate them consistently across the organization. Ensure that everyone understands the consequences of inappropriate conduct, what it looks like, and what happens if it happens. Next, we need to provide support and resources. Offer support services such as conflict resolution training, leadership development programs, and access to HR resources. And then we need to equip managers with the tools they need to address challenging situations effectively. Here are some of the things that they can do. I want you to document and report incidents. Please encourage your managers to document incidents of reverse bullying and report them to human resources or the owner of the organization. And if you're the owner and you're like, I don't know what to do with that, then call and get a consultant to come in because we need to handle this. Maintaining a record of behavior patterns can help identify underlying issues and guide corrective action. But I just want to add, you need to seek guidance from HR and legal experts when things like this come up, especially if you're like, it makes me not want to address it. I don't know what to do. Or this particular employee, I get a lot of people that are like, I think this person's a protected class. And a lot of times when that comes across someone's lips, I'm like, first of all, thank you for the information. I do need to know that while I'm navigating it. But second of all, if you have documented performance issues, protected class or not, we still have to have good performance, good behavior, respect, team cohesion, and all of that. So even if someone's in a protected class, that doesn't mean that we don't address behavioral issues. So if necessary, consult with an HR pro or a legal expert to navigate this complex situation. They can provide guidance on legal obligations, risk management, and best practices for addressing workplace behavioral issues. So some of the key takeaways that I got from both of these court cases, I want to reiterate to you is this: investigations must assess credibility of witnesses thoroughly. Allegations should never be accepted at face value without corroboration. So if someone comes and they're mad at their manager, we need to think, did this person or this person's close friend apply for this manager's role? Was this person disappointed because they didn't get a promotion? Are they having to change technology, change processes, and they don't want to? We have to think of everything going on before we make our decisions on what's actually happening. Leadership needs to recognize the potential for collusion among subordinates. This happens. And processes that drag on too long literally hurt everyone. So if you get a complaint in your organization, we need to learn about it. We need to investigate with anybody else who's involved. And we need to take swift action because there's no reason to keep things like this looming. I want you to take this away. Leaders can be bullied too. And when it happens, it takes strong, principled leadership to step in and correct the course. So in wrapping up, reverse bullying is one of those hidden challenges that can quietly erode your culture if not addressed. As leaders, it's our responsibility to foster a workplace where respect, accountability, and integrity are the standard at every level. And if you want the juicy details on my workplace bullying situation that directly impacted me, we can have the conversation. I can sit down with you and share if you're experiencing it. Yes, me too. But at the end of the day, we need to understand we just need to address it or get out of the situation if it's not healthy. If you're facing something like this in your organization, just know that you're not alone. We've seen this before, whether it's me personally or at my firm. And while it's tricky, we can help you navigate it. Thanks for tuning in today. Don't forget to share this episode with fellow leaders who might be dealing with similar challenges. Let's keep leading well regardless, being the people that we want to show up as regardless, growing stronger, and refusing to waste the chaos. Until next time.